You have text to music capabilities. How would you productize it?
A raw model is not a product. The trap that catches most people in the first 30 seconds is describing the technology. You might say it makes music from text, so now anyone can make a song. That's a demo, not a product. The strong answer does the opposite. It picks one wedge user with a painful repeating job, then designs the whole product and its guardrails around that single job. Narrow beats, broad every time. Let me show you why and how to run it through the Circles framework with an AI overlay. OpenAI is probing whether you can turn a shiny capability into a real business rather than just a party trick. They want to see if you can resist the urge to serve everyone. They are checking if you can spot which guardrail a real user won't ship without, and whether you pick a metric that measures actual value instead of a vanity number. By the end of this, you'll have a clean method to take any raw AI capability, whether text to music, text to image, or text to anything, and productize it around one specific job. First, we spend 90 seconds on scope because the answers reshape everything downstream. We need to know what the model can actually do. We must clarify if it produces full vocal songs or just instrumental beds, and whether it generates 15-second loops or 3-minute tracks. We also need to define the control surface, deciding if it is just a text prompt or a prompt combined with tempo, key, genre, and a reference track. Then comes the question that decides your entire go-to-market strategy, which is rights. You must ask if the training data is licensed and if the output can be used commercially. Ask that first, because if the answer is no, you don't have a creator product at all. For this answer, let's assume instrumental tracks up to 2 minutes, a prompt plus a few controls, and output cleared for commercial use. Next, we pick the wedge. Don't try to serve musicians, marketers, game studios, and podcasters all at once, because that's how products die. Instead, pick short-form video creators who need royalty-free background music that fits a specific mood and length. Today, these creators either pay for a stock music subscription or gamble on a copyright strike. Their job, in their own words, is to get a 30-second upbeat track that fits a cooking video without getting the video muted. This wedge is the right one because of frequency. A creator posts several times a week, so the job repeats. A repeating job builds a habit, and a habit builds retention. A one-off request to make a wedding song doesn't retain users, but a creator scoring their Tuesday video definitely does. Generation quality is certainly one problem, but the issues that decide whether people stay are product problems rather than model problems. Take controllability as an example. A user needs to say they want the same track but slower and without drums, without re-rolling from scratch and losing the elements they liked. That requires conditioning on the previous generation plus real edit controls, not just a fresh text box. Then there is length matching. The track has to hit the exact duration of the video with a musical ending and a proper resolve, rather than a hard cut mid-phrase. This means you need a structure-aware model or a trim and resolve step. Finally, we have safety and rights. You must run a similarity check against known copyrighted catalogs, so you never hand a creator a track that sounds like a hit song and gets them struck. Controllability, length, and rights are the true spine of the product. Let me walk through the flow. The prompt and controls go into a generation service that returns a few candidate stems instead of just one. The user auditions them and then edits. They can regenerate one section, change the tempo, or swap the instrumentation. All of this is conditioned on the chosen candidate, so its identity is preserved, which is the exact difference between an editor and a slot machine. Then a similarity and rights check runs on the final track against a reference embedding index before export. The export itself hits the exact video length with a clean musical resolve and attaches a machine-readable license receipt. This receipt is proof the creator can show if a platform ever questions it. The feedback loop is baked in. Which candidate the user picked, which one they exported, and whether they came back are all training and ranking signals. I want to spend a moment on controllability because it quietly makes or breaks this product, and an interviewer will reward you for going deep on it. The naive version of a music tool is basically a slot machine. You type a prompt and get a track. If you don't like it, you type again and get something completely different, meaning you've lost the one bit you actually liked. That is exhausting, and it is exactly why people churn. The fix is conditioning. When a user asks for the same track but slower and without drums, you don't start over. You keep the latent representation of the track they chose and apply the edit as a transformation on top of it. The melody and the vibe survive while the tempo and the drum stem change. Under the hood, that means you're generating stems separately, including drums, bass, melody, and pads, so the user can mute or swap one without touching the rest. This mimics the way a real producer works in a digital audio workstation. You expose that as simple controls like a tempo slider, an energy dial, and a button to regenerate just one section rather than a wall of knobs. The core design principle is that every edit should feel like nudging the thing you already have instead of rolling the dice again. Get that right, and a casual creator starts to feel like they have taste, which is the exact feeling that keeps them coming back. Now we move to metrics, which is where people often trip up. Your North Star is tracks exported and actually used in a published video per active creator per week. It is definitely not tracks generated. Generating is cheap and means nothing, since a user can generate 50 tracks and hate all of them. Usage in a real published video is the actual value. Your guardrails are the rights check, false negative rate, and the time to first usable track. A struck track is a trust-destroying failure that ends the relationship. And if it takes 10 re-rolls to get something usable, the creator leaves and never comes back. Both guardrails protect the exact same thing, which is trust. I would also add one leading indicator you can watch weekly, which is the re-roll count before the first export. If people need 8 generations to get something usable this week and 6 next week, controllability is improving and retention will follow. If that count is climbing, something is wrong with the model or the controls. You will see it in churn a month later, so you want that early warning right now. Then we cover money and the road out. You start with a free tier featuring watermarked or lower fidelity output to seed the habit and let the product go viral in creator communities. Then you offer a paid tier for commercially cleared high fidelity exports and longer tracks. Your wedge is creators, but you must name the expansion path from that beachhead because an investor-minded interviewer wants to see the second act. From creators, you move to game studios who need adaptive background loops that react to gameplay. Then you target ad agencies who want brand-tuned tracks at scale. Eventually, you build a full digital audio workstation plugin for working musicians. Once your controllability is strong enough that professionals actually trust it, each step reuses the engine and widens the market. Notice the sequencing logic here. You move to the next segment only once the core problem of the current one is solved. Game studios won't touch you until length matching and controllability are rock solid, and musicians won't touch you until the output quality clears a professional bar. You earn the right to the next market by nailing the one you are currently in. Let me make this concrete. You ship a Score My Video flow and put it right inside an existing creator tool. The creator uploads a 30-second clip. The product reads its length and cut points, offers 3 moods like upbeat, chill, or dramatic, and generates 3 candidate beds per mood. Each bed is already matched to the clip length. The creator nudges the tempo and energy on the one they like. Every export runs the copyright similarity check and attaches a license receipt. Your target for the first cohort is a median time to first usable track under 60 seconds, with at least 40% of generations reaching an actual export. Here is a second, sharper example for when they push you. Suppose the interviewer asks, what happens if the model keeps producing tracks that are technically fine but boring? You don't just shrug. You add a taste ranking layer trained on which candidates real creators export. You seed the first three moods from what performs best on the platform, and you measure the export rate per mood so you can retire the moods nobody uses. That approach shows you'll keep learning after launch instead of just shipping and hoping for the best. Here's what makes the hiring manager lean in. First, they notice that you chose one wedge user with a frequent, painful job instead of saying everyone can make music. Focus is a strong maturity signal. Second, they see that you treated controllability and right safety as first class product problems rather than afterthoughts bolted on at the end. Those are the elements that actually decide retention and legal survival. Third, they appreciate that your North Star measures usage in published videos instead of a vanity generation count. Anyone can artificially inflate generation numbers, so measuring actual usage shows you understand real value. Let's cover the traps. The first one is describing the capabilities of the model and calling that a product. You might say it can make any genre in any style, but that's just a feature list without a defined user. The second trap is the fatal one for a music product specifically, which is ignoring copyright and licensing. That's the single biggest blocker to any commercial music product. If you don't mention it, a music-savvy interviewer knows you haven't thought it through. The third trap is picking a use case that is easy to demo but has no repeat job behind it. A one-off novelty song is a great demo and a terrible business, so you need to pick the job that brings them back next week. Let's pull it all together. You clarify what the model does and critically whether the output is rights cleared. You pick one wedge, which is short form creators, with one repeating job of scoring their videos. You treat controllability, length matching, and right safety as the real product. You measure tracks actually used in published videos, and you name the expansion path out to studios, agencies, and eventually musicians. Ultimately, a capability only becomes a true product when you tie it to a specific